Howdy, folks. This is Windy City Watch here with Declared Dave.
Hi,
Today we're
everybody.
going to do a little. Oh, howdy, Dave. Thanks for coming in. Today or tonight we're going to kind of just go over a week in review. We both had some good videos out there, and this is sort of the speed run. Give you guys a chance to. We'll show you the highlights. Give you guys a chance to engage, ask questions. We'll go on from there. But for starters, how you doing there, Pixel? Great to see you. Would you like some cat chow?
Hang on, let me remove that real quick.
Nice.
Sorry. Okay,
all good. How was your week, Dave? But other than what you're talking about today.
it was a really good week. Obviously, Monday started off pretty darn strong with Oh No Nora. That was a real amazing show, and a really great way to launch the new series that I've got called Scientology's Dirty Jobs, or the Dirty Jobs in Scientology. And I have so much more that planning on doing for that program, that series, over many shows, as we discuss kind of the low man on the totem pole, or the low woman on the totem pole, who is out there thinking that they're doing good stuff for the cult, and have been brainwashed, or have been uh, just completely bamboozled into thinking that the giving up their lives, giving up their families, giving up their time and money is somehow going to make the planet a better place. So we hear a lot about the big wigs and the ex-executives and the current executives, but it's really important that we focus in on the small person. So that was just a really great show. And then on Thursday, we did the episode. I did the episode on welcoming to the Sea Org, and apparently I triggered Natalie again, which I seem to have that's going to be my new dead agent pack, is that I scare women on the street, and I trigger Natalie Webster. But I love Natalie Webster and can't wait to actually do something with her. But that was just what's it like to join the Sea Org, at least from a Never Ends perspective, looking at the documents in L. Ron Hubbard's world. And got more of the dirty jobs coming up next week, more of the normal expose type work. And I'm doing my part as someone who can't get out like you can't get out to audit all the time. It's good to get out there and at least try to expose them from my computer system here. So
I agree.
yeah.
And I think that it's important. You're right. We hear an awful lot about, right, the Mike Rinder roles, the Claire Headley roles, the Mitch Brisker, which is kind of a glam, by all means would be a glamorous role. Even I think Mark Headley's job would have been, pretty cool job that goes on there. And then there's custodial workers and these people that are doing the body routing, these people that are doing the conversions inside the org. There's a person sitting at the desk every day when I'm there. There's somebody working in the cafeteria being a barista, right? And
Yep.
is that really what you came to? Do you believe you're clearing the planet with these types of jobs?
I mean, the obviously the celebrities like Leah Remini and Tom Cruise and John Travolta, whether they're in or out, the former executives like the Renders and the Headleys, they are celebrities in their own right in the Scientology, and certainly them being at the highest echelons in Scientology, they're dealing with David Miscavige, the cult leader, and even the long term ones like the Janice Gillum Grady's and the Mark Fishers and all them, who were there either with Hubbard or shortly after Hubbard. They have the more juicy gossip, if you will, of what it's like to be in Scientology. But really, it's the little person who is never made it to OT, who is basically giving 14, 15, 16, 24, 48 hours at a time, no sleep, very little food, who's being sent to the RPF, or whatever they call the RPF nowadays. I heard today that it might be called the Category B EPF or something. Scientology loves to rebrand for PR purposes. And it's important because those are the ones that are having to show up every day, and most of them making no money. You know, the class 5 staff, the ones you see there in Chicago, the ones out there in Portland, they're only getting paid a percentage, a very small percentage of whatever that org took in the last week. They're not getting a salary. They're not getting an hourly rate like they would if they were working a minimum wage job. And they're working full shifts. They're working, you know, whether it's a day shift from 8:30 to 6 and a night shift from 5:30 to 10 or whatever it is, and then weekends. And they are the ones just kicking butt. You got to give them credit for, if they believe what they truly believe,
Yeah.
then they're at least dedicated, no matter how much we believe that that dedication is misplaced. Just, you know, it's amazing. I think about all these ex-Scientologists, and just their work ethic is so impressive when they get out of Scientology, and they're almost always successful. They're almost always capable of doing so much. Just imagine if you had that kind of capability in just the general population. I
Correct.
wish I had half their capability.
I think that's a big reason why there are so many success stories of ex-Scientologists, former Scientologists, just because of that work that we just have to go get it, right? We wake up, we
Mhm.
do work, we go get it in that space. And, you know, to the earlier point, I say this, and victim might be, you know, a triggering word, but I truly believe that most of the people that I engage on the street or that I'm engaging there, they're a victim in every sense of the word, that they just don't know that they're a victim yet, right?
Yeah, the word victim obviously is a pejorative in Scientology, and you are responsible for everything that happens to you and everything that you do. And in a lot of ways, you're also responsible for everything that happens to everybody else, because that's what Hubbard says. But they are victims. They are at the mercy of a tyrant sitting in Scientology Media Productions in LA, or sitting in the Hacienda Gardens or whatever, wherever he lives nowadays. They are a victim to an internal justice system that believes that you're at fault first, that you're guilty. You know, 99.9% of the time you're guilty. They're a victim of a money making, human trafficking, elder abusing, child abusing cult.
Right.
And they're a victim of brainwashing, as I've repeatedly said on my channel a lot. And You know, there
Yeah.
was a I think there was a question that came up on one of Natalie's streams or something else about, you know, how can Rebecca Minkoff get on a podcast with another cult survivor from an entirely different cult and not be affected? Well, they're brainwashed to not believe that their religion is a cult.
Absolutely correct.
You know, they've been indoctrinated to believe in. And when you're indoctrinated like that, you don't ever think that your religion, quote unquote, is a cult. And so you're immune, you know, to hearing that from another cult survivor from a different cult. You know, you can clearly see that the Moonies or the Heaven's Gate folks, they're crazy cult people, but you there's a disconnect. There's a broken wire in the brain of a Scientologist or any other cult member that keeps them from connecting the two together in that association, because they're indoctrinated not to think that way.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think that the similarity is that Mooney, the Heaven's Gate, the Jonestown person,
Mhm.
the vast majority of them, they also don't that they don't believe they're in their cult. They
Nope.
think they're family, right? That I'm amongst people that love me. I'm in a group. I belong, and that belonging is the trigger that traps them, right? That
Yeah. I mean, as human beings, I'm not a psychologist, but I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. You know, as human beings, we long to be a part of something, whether whether it's be a part of this community that's out there trying, like our community that we have here, in the anti-Scientology space, or it's a community of a religious organization, or it's a VFW, or if it's a family unit. The difference is a cult tries to control every aspect of you. You know, being a member of your family, I mean, while you're a child growing up, yeah, your parents control most of what you do. But once you reach a certain point in years, then you're free to make your own decisions. When you're a part of a community organization like a Habitat for Humanity or anything, they're not trying to control your behavior outside of just the time, that small amount of time that you're committing to that group, right? And they're not trying to dissuade you from, well, hopefully they're not trying to dissuade you from believing a certain way. But with a cult, you've got the whole bite model of control. You know, they want to control behavior, they want to control information, they want to control thought, and they want to control emotion. And that's what's happening in all these identified cults. And Scientology is an identified cult. I mean, there's this fallacy out there that I hear all the time. Oh, the United States has deemed Scientology to be a religion. That's a fallacy. The
Right.
United States is prohibited from declaring any one group a religion. All they've done is given them tax exempt status as a charity organization. So, you know, you can't just come out and say, "Oh, well, the United States believes that we're a religion." Well, the United States, that's a fallacy. That's not real. So,
Correct. Yep. And yeah, I've had that a few times where I've talked about that. The idea that in the United States, it's the person saying their religion that decides who is a religion. That
mhm.
I can say I'm a religion, and this the government cannot do anything against my statement saying I'm a religion. Right.
Exactly. You can't, the government cannot qualify or disqualify someone from being a religion in and of themselves. What they can do in the tax level, which is an executive branch in the United States, is they can say, well, if this organization can prove that it has charitable goals and it does follows these rules, then they can have some kind of tax exemption. Now, I have my own issues with granting tax exemption just to anybody. I don't think that, I think and that most religions probably shouldn't have tax exemption. They should have some form of tax exemption if the money that they put back out into the community. If you're a church of any faith and you spend 20% of your annual budget clearly on feeding the hungry,
Right.
clothing the unclothed, housing the unhoused, providing services, and that money is flowing back up, then you get a big tax break on that money. But just because you have a building somewhere, I just don't feel that should be enough reason. And that's that's how Scientology does it. Is they don't give any money back out.
Nope.
They the only money that they ever give back out is done for safe pointing, to people, to political leaders, and to police, and to that kind of thing.
Their intention is never to help the community. Their
No,
intention is to protect themselves.
exactly. So their tax shelters are all in property. And so why are we giving tax exemption status to organizations whose sole purpose is to purchase property and half of the property not even be renovated? Or I don't know if it's half, but a good portion of that property is sitting abandoned, sitting empty, and cities are having to eminently domain take them back or do
Right.
something. And uh, there's no provable return of, and you hear the term in Scientology, all money flows up, it never flows back down. Well, in most charitable organizations, if you're a 501c 1 2 3 4 whatever in the United States tax code, you have to spend money. You can't just hoard it all. But there's so many of those loopholes that allow you to hoard it in a property or hoard it into whatever. And the only good lining about the Scientology tax exemption is they're not 100% tax exempt. They still pay taxes on hotel property. They still pay taxes on restaurant property. They still pay taxes on anything that is not religious service, quote unquote. So at least, you know, they pay something somewhere, but 96% of it they don't pay taxes on. Anyway.
Agreed. Yep. I just want to bring this up because again, that I let's see here. I love the courage that Amber brings forward her story, and that she's got a voice in this community now, and I really appreciate that. But we're seeing she was a Sea Org member, right, and and grew up through the cadet org and then Sea Org, and you never understand that you're in cult. It's definitely not something that's being talked about inside of the organization, right? But even if it's being talked about outside of this past week, I had the little interaction with the one woman who she couldn't understand what I was saying, but as soon as I said "es una secta," immediately it threw up
I
her
saw
ears,
that.
and it's like, this is not a cult. And it was just like, darn it. Someday you're going to find out that I regrettably was correct. Right.
Well, that's another thing that cults will do is they will change the language.
Yep.
They will alter the language. They will come up with their own vernacular. They'll come up with their own acronyms. Hubbard was a master at that. And they're not going to use trigger words like calling something a cult because, all it takes is a tiny little critical thinking pinprick. It's somebody hears the word cult. They've never heard it before. And they're like, and weirdly enough, in Scientology and their love of dictionaries, someone hears the word cult. It's like, what, I heard this word cult. And they go look at a dictionary that's not a Scientology dictionary. They go pick up a Webster's, or they go pick up a Merriam or an Oxford, and they look up the word cult, and it says, a high control group, blah, 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 that does all this stuff. And then they start to put two and two together with the life that they've been living inside, whether they've been in the Sea Org or in the Cadet Org or a staffer or a public in Scientology, they run the risk. So, and again, that's information control. That's part of that bite model, Steve Hassan's bite model, which fits so adequately and so apropos. Steve Hassan was not resting on his laurels like some other people out there who claim to be anti-Scientologists. But all you have to do is apply that bite model to anything. If I were in somebody brought up Jehovah's Witnesses. I've been watching a lot of Jehovah's Witness stuff. And as a Christian, pseudo-Christian cult, I see the behavior control. I see the information control. I see the thought and the emotion control. And I'm like, wow, if I walk into a Presbyterian church or if I walk into a Baptist church, there's going to be some of that, right? There's going to be behavioral control. There's going to be elders and deacons that are going to be like, well, you shouldn't commit immoral acts and all this stuff. But they're not, I'm not paying to be a part of that cult, which is what Scientologists are. B, if they want to shun me or if they want to excommunicate me, then by all means go ahead. They don't exert the kind of thought control. I mean, they try to hit you over the head with the Bible, or they try to hit you over the head with something, but they're not to the level, not to the degree that some of these more high control. I would not consider any of them high control. If you allow them to be high control, then but anyway, I could talk on for hours.
No, and I do agree with that, and I will say that Scientology just seems to peak on a lot of these elements. That FDL, the Latter Day Saints, especially. I believe that there are two factions for the most part these days in that space, and one is still practicing polygamy and Jehovah's Witness,
The FLDS, yeah.
FLDS. Okay, and then the shunning element that's there, and again, it's not to the same degree, but they do have some of the behaviors. It's just that Scientology has all of the behaviors, and
Yes.
they are full court press all the time on all of those behaviors.
And they're a pay to play.
Yeah.
You know, in the LDS church and some of the other and the Jehovah's, yet you're supposed to tithe 10%, right?
Right.
That's what is declared in the Bible. And in those cults, if you don't tithe, then you do run the risk of being excommunicated or shunned or disfellowshipped, I think is what they call it in
Right.
Jehovah's Witness. So, you know, it's when those organizations introduce this disconnection because of you didn't pay enough, you didn't meet your quota, you didn't do your work, you communicated with someone who was disconnected or disfellowshipped or excommunicated, or, you know, and that's again goes back to the whole behavior control. Um, where I think Scientology takes it to a H and L, as Aaron from growing up Scientology, is it becomes a a physical punishment, a mental and emotional punishment to another level, a financial punishment.
Right.
The whole idea of sunk cost fallacy kicks in, right? You could say that, okay, well, I've been giving 10% to my church for 20 years, but I didn't have to go up some level. I didn't have to reach the next level. I didn't have to study this next thing. I didn't have to, and with some potential outcome, some fantastical superpower guarantee. And that's where Scientology takes it to an H&L, is that they promise you all this fantastical things.
Right.
And other cults, they promise you life after death, or they promise you life beyond Armageddon, or they promise you we're going to go and see the aliens or the spaghetti monster in the sky, or, you know,
Right.
um, but for most of them, you mean you don't hear that, okay, well, I've sunk 300, 400, $1 million into going up this fictional bridge to get some kind of superpower. And I've spent so much money over my course in this cult that now if I, you know, have a relative or a child or a friend who's been disconnected from the church, that if I want to be in contact with that person, I'm going to lose all that money and all
Right.
that time and all that effort. And I've confessed all these sins, quote unquote, all these overts and withholds. You know, I never once had to go into a Presbyterian church or a Baptist church and confess my sins. Thank goodness I didn't grow up. Some people could say the Catholic faith is got a cult aspect to it, because you have to go pray to an intercessor to get your sins absolved. And that's, you know, it's like, just frustrates me. And I'm a believer. I am a Christian. I'm
Right.
a believer. But at the same time, I'm also a critical thinker. And I don't know. It's weird. So
Yeah. No Face is kind of talking about a Jehovah's, right? So the Jehovah's Witness experience there. Howdy, Elron. Great to see you. And sorry, I always see everybody saying hi, and I want to say hi to everybody, but I also don't want to disrupt the conversation. But yeah, this is right. The idea that this disconnection, and it's a powerful element. The idea that I can't talk to my family anymore.
mhm.
Yeah, I'm going to make improper decisions. Darn it, what bound it, right? The idea that we don't force you to have disconnection, but it's a bounded decision. The idea that, but if you don't, here's really what's going to happen. So it's your choice. You decide, right?
Right. You're oh, it's a personal choice. It's a, you know, you've got one of two choice. They give you two choices. They give you very black and white. Again, that's a very cult thing, is there's a lot of black and white. There's no gray. There's no balance in there. It's like you either handle the suppressive person, or you disconnect from the suppressive person
Right.
in Scientology. That's your only two choices. And in what I've been watching a lot of JW stuff lately is that they've got this whole thing called disfellowship, which is essentially the same thing.
Right.
The difference being is there's no financial penalty for it that I've seen thus far. I could be wrong. There is a penalty of disconnecting you from potentially your family and forcing you to go through a confessional type thing where you have to confess your sins to Jehovah in front of all of these elders, and not only that, but then you've got, and then you've got this whole like you're kept away from understanding the world, understanding your body, understanding how things function. And it's like everything becomes taboo. So of course, the moment you breach that taboo, you've sinned now. And Scientology does that too a lot, especially in like things like the Sea Org and whatever. They make a lot of things taboo. Um, it's disgusting what I've watched.
Right.
Like I said, over the past week or so, I've for some reason my YouTube stream has been a lot of JW, anti JW stuff, and just watching and seeing the parallels. I'm telling Suppressive Sherry, like, oh my gosh, doesn't that just sound like just like Scientology? I mean, that just
Yep.
it's crazy.
Now, again, the place where I think the difference is, right, is the idea that usually you'll see some high points in, and by high points, I mean exaggerated examples of or these behaviors, but Scientology just hits them all, right,
Oh,
in this situation. So,
I mean, it's like whack-a-mole, and they've hit every single whack-a-mole, every mole that's come up. Like there's no oh, so I was so funny. Scientology is hyper focused on its statistics.
right.
Your weekly, monthly, whatever statistics that you've got, your production statistics if you're a member, or the org statistics, or the Sea Org statistics, or the fundraising statistics. And we were just listening to something about JWs, and they actually track statistics as well. And they track, their pioneers, which are their missionaries, basically the ones out there going door to door. And up until very recently, you would have to report and record all your hours spent on doing this work. And I just heard today, or it was yesterday, I think, I don't know, we were running errands and we were listening to somebody off YouTube, and they've done away with that. And it's because, just like in Scientology, the stats are going down
Right.
and nobody wants to hear the bad news. And so they can just turn around. If nobody reports bad news, then whatever good news they say can't be refuted, which is very Scientology of them.
Yes. That's one of the there's similar to that, the idea that many of these high control groups have their salad days.
Mhm.
L. Ron Hubbard in the 60s and 70s, it was cool and it was chic to be part of Scientology.
It's
It
very
was an in
countercultural.
thing, right? And the you hear a lot of the policies that we still try to stand by today, in the idea that says, I think it's Tory would say that if you left Scientology, great, here's your money. Sorry, it's not for you. Great, we'll find somebody else. And in those days, there was somebody else lining up at the door ready to come in. Um, that is no longer the situation. And whether or not we want to say that David Miscavige squirreled, and by the way, I do think he changed L. Ron
Oh,
Hubbard. So you
absolutely.
you can't say that you believe in L. Ron Hubbard and the idea that David Miscavige is changing his policy, but the idea that, yeah, we don't give money back, and the reason we don't give money back anymore is because I don't have somebody lined up behind you to take your place anymore, right? That people would fall into the Church of Scientology. You didn't have to pull them into the Church of Scientology.
Well, it's not only that, but Miscavige understands that back in the day when Hubbard was still alive and up until 93, up until they got their tax exemption status back, all the money came from services. All the money came from processing or auditing, came from book sales, and came from courses, right? They didn't have giant whale donations coming in. They didn't
Yep.
have billionaires and millionaires just forking over cash. In
Yep.
fact, Hubbard wrote policy specifically prohibiting just pure fundraising. Now, probably whether he would still follow that mantra today, but you got to remember, for most of the time when he was alive, they had their tax exemption in the early to mid 50s, and then they lost it after he was found to be benefiting from it directly. Now, whether or not, had he been alive and they had their tax exemption, he would have okayed the direct fundraising, is something we'll never know, because any money that they brought in, because I mean, again, without tax exemption, donations get taxed at their regular rate.
Correct.
And had he still been alive when they had their in 93 or 94, 95, 96 and all that, he might have changed his tune, because he changed his tune a lot. But they had to produce, which is the whole idea of production in Scientology, is they had to sell services. They had to get members into the org. They had to get fresh meat off the street. They had to get people doing auditing. They had to train up auditors. They don't make their money that way anymore. The
Right.
only org, as we all heard, the only org making money is Flag, you know, and Miscavige doesn't care. He doesn't. All he cares about is the IAS, the Ideal Org donation campaign, and Flag.
Yep.
And he could give two shits about, Kansas City org or Cincinnati org or Seattle or Portland. I think he cares a lot about Chicago, and I think he cares a lot about Austin, because I think those two orgs are very well situated physically. Like, you all
Right.
have they're in a very high foot traffic area. Most of the other orgs out there are not. And he knows that they're not going to, the Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Twin Cities org. I mean, who was going in there? You were there. I
Yep.
was watching it remotely. Nobody was going in there. So he doesn't care. All he cares about are the IAS donations, the Ideal Org donations, and Flag.
Yeah. Now this that right. I am aware of this, and I know that there is a subset of Scientologists that really believed in L. Ron Hubbard, and whether or not they internal to Scientology still practice L. Ron Hubbard more than David Miscavige. Or there's also I think their freedom, is it freedom something, is the external to Scientology. There is a known group of people that still study the tech. They're
There's the
just not
free zoners or the
free zoners.
independents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's another one that I wanted to hit here, that and you know I would think this as well, Witness, but I'm always surprised that there's always another press release about somebody else, that Dream Exchange is the one that I see here in Chicago. They keep on pulling in more partners, and that I don't know that those partners know that they're coming into Scientology, but they're coming into Scientology, right? In that space. So,
the talking about Witness's comment here, they can continue to bleed from the whales as long as the whales continue to make money.
right.
And that's what surprises me about the whole Aaron Cairo thing, is they've bled him dry. And I don't understand why they did that, why they allowed him to join staff. I would have, they, to me, because they can continue to go after the feshbacks and the starts with a D, the all the bigwigs and the lady that does Bart Simpson's voice, as long as those people continue to make money. But as
All right.
soon as they stop making money, they will be of worth. They'll be of no worth.
That's the part that I'll bet that they just don't understand. The idea that if you can't give me money, if you can't bring me new people, if you can't proselytize for me, I see no value in you, right?
Yeah, and you know, Amy M just brought up a great comment here that says they recruit from their business management courses. Yes, they do. WISE is one of their better recruiting, World Institute of Scientology Enterprises. And that's why you see all the dentists and chiropractors and business consultants and but I don't think they don't get anywhere still that they get from their whales. And I think that their whales end up basically trafficking children, like your dream exchange people, um, podiatrists. Yeah, but in my 30 years in business in IT and whatnot, I've never once seen Hubbard technology brought into anything I've ever been involved in. So, of course, maybe I wasn't in the medical field, or I wasn't in the. I'm thankful that I wasn't,
Right.
but
Just I just want to bring this up real quick. This is Dream Exchange's leadership board. So this is from their own website, and everything with the red line there is somebody who's taken Scientology courses. Right. Now, I'm going to say I'll be benevolent to the folks over at Scientology, that it's things like the communication course. Which, by the way, I don't think that it's a bad idea to have good communication skills. I don't think it's a bad idea to look up words that you don't know. But this is that feeder, and it's a funnel of, this is how we're going to get more people in there. And I think there are more people on this list that I haven't yet identified. I think that Shannon found a few more on this list that have done courses in Scientology. Right.
Well, that goes back to the whole idea of universal truths, and whether or not you learning how to talk to a person, how to effectively convey your ideas. Nora and I talked about this on our stream last Monday, where none of this stuff is new. All of
Correct.
his study technology he stole from other people. All of his alien stuff is arguably been stolen, or been mismatched from so many sources. He was friends with a lot of influential science fiction writers back in the 50s and the 40s.
Yep.
The Asimovs and the those people like that. And nothing that he put out there is new. You could just as easily go pay for a generic Tony Robbins course.
Dale Carnegie, Tony
Yeah.
Robbins, right?
Now some people might say that those, like that Tony Robbins is a cult, just like Grant Cardone
Yes,
is creating
Grant
his own
Cardone.
cult. But there's nothing, and then Hubbard stole from Buddhist philosophy. Hubbard stole from Taoist philosophy. I've listened to at his lectures where he's talking about how Scientology came to be, and so much of it was based on these Eastern philosophies.
Right.
And a lot of Eastern philosophies focus in on universal truths. I want to just show you all this. This is my desk right now. So you all know that there's a kitty cat. There's a pixelator. He literally, his head just fell onto it to fall asleep.
It's my bed. Yep.
Yeah. So
All right.
S Landmark. Yeah. I mean, Nixium was an offshoot of that. What else? I was going to say that. Well, anyway, yeah.
All right. We promised you here. We promised to bring you here, and we will go over some of the highlights of this past week. Dave, you want to start us off with?
Yeah, I can bring this up here.
So just a reminder, Dave had, I think in the last 7 days, he's had 3 lives in that space. So exteriorization.
So yeah, on Friday of last week, I think it was an offsite. By the way, y'all, if y'all have the chance, go open up a second tab and stream on my channel as well. Just mute it.
Yes. By the way, yeah, share on his instead of mine if you have to.
It just helps us all out.
Yes.
So on Thursdays of last week, we talked about exteriorization and this whole idea that a Scientologist is in their best, a thetan, which is in Scientology, you've got 3 aspects to life. You've got the thetan, which is the spirit. You have the body, which is the physical form that the thetan is in control of. And then you have the mind, which is the recording device. whenever you hear a Scientologist say I or you or it, they're always referring to the thetan. They're never referring to the body. They'll identify the body separately. And that's also what often happens in Hubbard's writing. Well, the best place in Scientologists' mind for a thetan to be is 3 feet behind the body, back of the head, and in control. And what we went through last Friday was this document on what is exteriorization, and it's sort of like an out of body existence, if you will. And a lot of Eastern philosophies will, and this is um, another one of those Eastern philosophies that Hubbard stole, is this whole idea of astral projection or exteriorization or out of body experience, and somehow being able to see your body from outside of it. And in this document, and we're not going to listen to the whole thing, but I'll just go play a couple of quick bites here from what I was talking about with this document. Exteriorization. And there probably has been a lot of y'all that have seen some YouTube videos from some of the other anti-Scientology protesters and content creators out there talking about this concept of exteriorization and what it really amounts. Now, I want y'all to know I did not plan to wear the same t-shirt tonight as I wore Friday. That was not planned, but you might notice it. I think it's the same t-shirt.
Dave's laundry machine's broken.
I got a rotation too. In a lot of other fantasy and other transcendental type meditations and stuff, it's like an astral projection. It's like in Scientology, it's called being 3 feet in back of your head, behind you. And because we are all thetans, according to Scientology, immortal thetans that have been around for 75 trillion years, we exist with no mass, no space, no time, and we only inhabit a body to control the body. We're not the body itself, and we're not the mind itself. There are 3 components to a thetan. All right, now I'm getting repetitive, but let's talk about Scientology believes that you can go exterior in a lot of different ways. You can go exterior through Dianetic auditing, which is basically the introductory type auditing, the going after the engrams, which are moments of pain and unconscious that cause all aberration in your life. You can have it with doing drills. You can have it when you're being e-meter audited, when you're going down the whole track. Trying to think if there was anything else that and basically what I'm going through in this document, we're not going to continue too much more on this particular one, was there's all these different ways of going exterior. Now, I've heard on listening to people like Aaron and other Scientologists that no Scientologist has ever really gone exterior, that it is just a fantasy, a made up, a make believe, a happy to think about. Probably people saying they went exterior to float their needle, to get out from under the auditing actions that they're under, so that they can be free and be able to go on and do other things. The one thing that I am going to show here real quick is there are these steps, right? These are where we hear ask the pre-clear. I'll just play it here. The Creation of Human Ability. That's the book that this is all. So yeah, this information comes out of the book, The Creation of Human Ability, which is a very fantasy-based psychic thing. All in. As I take a drink. So what we have here is step 1. Ask the pre-clear to be 3 feet behind his head. If stable there, have him be in various pleasant places until any feeling of scarcity of viewpoints is resolved. Then have him be in several undesirable places, then several pleasant places, then have him be in a slightly... Okay, Didn't remember that I did the Scottish accent here, but
Groundskeeper Willie, here we go.
I already, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel. The Scientology does this whole brainwashing routine of repetition, 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 repetition. Do this, then do the opposite, then do that again, then do the opposite. Do this, ask this question, then ask this question, then go back to this question, then ask this question. And they all throughout Scientology, they use this technique, which I think is very, again, I'm not a brainwashing expert, but I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. There is a very consistent use of this technique. And I think it's all there to create uh, a hypnotic effect on the person that's getting the auditing, and can make you believe, sincerely, that you probably did go exterior. Dangerous place. Then in more and more dangerous places until he can sit in the center of the sun. Be sure to observe a gradient scale of ugliness and dangerousness of places. Do not let the pre-clear fail. Then do remaining steps with pre-clear exteriorized. So already in step 1, you're supposed to be going exterior. I mean, yeah. So that was, yeah, that was, and there's this all stuff like spacation and give and take processing. And then at the very end of this, we actually read a demonstration from a lecture that Hubbard gave on the 7th of April, 1953. And I think this is probably in one of his audio lectures as well. And what he's actually doing is he's talking to Scientologists that have gathered for one of these congresses or a lecture or whatever. And he's picked some people. I don't know if they were randomly picked. I don't know if they were set up people. I don't know. And he's literally walking them through a Dianetics auditing. I don't think there was an e-meter involved. You don't have to have an e-meter to do auditing. I definitely go check out the live to go through the whole. And I tried to do it in the L. Ron Hubbard voice. So I'm not going to play that for you because the L. Ron Hubbard voice kind of triggers some people. But yeah, that was the first, or that was my Friday. L. Ron Liar, yeah. The Hubbard impersonation, Hubbard impression is, other than the Scottish, is my second strongest impersonation. The problem is, and I say this with great power comes great responsibility, is that it can trigger a lot of ex-Scientologists and a lot of under the radar Scientologists. And the last thing I want to do is push people away. So I try to control it. And I'm doing it. I also want people to recognize that I'm doing it to make fun of Hubbard because Hubbard deserves to be made fun of.
Yep. So one thing I kind of wanted, that Dave and I, we attack Scientology from 2 different perspectives, right? The idea that I think that he gives an awful lot of education and the understanding of what these people are going through and the technologies that they've had take place in. He's just a well-studied person in this space. And I just have the advantage of the idea that the organization is very near to me. So I can go out and I can confront people in much more of a retail space, right? In this element, but it is this idea that the things that we're hearing from Dave are things that I want to be able to help keep reminding the Scientologists of, right? Hey, have you exteriorized, right? So do you know how to stay 3 feet behind yourself in these spaces, right? And if you haven't, aren't you questioning the technology, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that there are really 2 major fronts in the anti-Scientology movement. There are the people on the ground outside the orgs, like yourself, like the other Chicago squirrels, like the LA squirrels and whatnot. They're the front line, and I think the major goal, and I think you've said this before, is the your primary mission is obviously to keep new people from getting in, to make them aware of the trickery that the body routers do, that the
Yep.
temptation to come into the org to see a movie or to take a stress test or to take a personality test. And I can't do that. The closest org I have is an hour and 15 minutes away, and it's a class 5 failing org that is in an big old Baptist church that doesn't have big windows and easy access. It sits on the corner of two very busy car streets. And so you've been there, you've audited it. And it's like,
Right.
so what I try to do as someone, as a never in who has an insatiable desire to learn, is try to expose the knowledge that I've gained from reading this stuff. I've listened to Hubbard lectures. I've watched videos. I've obviously watched all the other anti-Scientologists out there. I've this library behind me. I've got e-meters up here. My goal in the other front is to maybe expose the cult from its own words, from its own dictionaries, from its own publications, to break down the to break down the dissemination into something that might make an existing Scientologist think critically. They may read something that says, if I did a live on Hubbard's war career and how much of a failure his war career is, and yet 100% of Scientologists, when they're in the cult, are told that Hubbard was this amazing war hero who was granted, 1 billion medals and fought in every World War II battle zone and commanded gigantic corvettes. And when all he did was shell and bomb Mexico and shell and bomb giant trees in the water and depth charge tree trunks and spend most of his time in the latter parts of the years in a hospital with whatever condition he claimed to have, and who never made it past a temporary promotion to lieutenant commander. And when he left, he was actually reduced back down to lieutenant, so, and there, and maybe a Scientologist would see an episode of mine and be like, oh my gosh, we were always told that he was this amazing war hero, that he was this amazing nuclear physicist, and that he was part of the whole Manhattan Project. And so that's like my goal. Now, obviously, you also have the opportunity to possibly get into the brain of a existing Scientology member. But and I think you've got video of just this week where you're, letting the public know that, hey, it's a cult. It's a cult.
Yep. So today, I didn't plan on showing this, but I want to jump over to this one real quick today. And this is the deceptive practices of Scientology, right? The idea that when they're recruiting you, they are not telling you they're recruiting you into Scientology. So today we were out there. I was out there because I felt that with Lollapalooza, there'd be a lot of people out on the street doing body routing or sidewalk recruiting. But what we're seeing here, by the way, the guy in the red, he's a body router that he used to be paired with the thin black curly haired fella. But I haven't seen him in a while. So I don't know if he's moved on, if he's left Scientology or if he's moved on to another org in this space. But the guy in the white shirt, he's got the bag there and he's got a book in that bag and he's coming out, and I'll kind of just let this play real quick. Oh, I can't hit play on the StreamYard version. Oh, 1 second.
I think
I muted the actual stream, so. How you doing? It's a cult, right? Yeah. You're okay? So Danny Masterson raped 3 women. He's a member in good standing of this church. He's in jail for 30 years to life. He's still a member there. The 3 people that he raped, when they went forward, the church disowned those 3 people. So the victims couldn't report their crimes. This group.
Church of Scientology.
So do you see him kind of crane his, you saw his reflection in there. He's craning his neck. He had no idea that he was in the Church of Scientology, right? And shortly after this, I gave him one of the business cards that I carry with me. And I could tell that he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I just walked in there. And again, that don't ever think that, oh, everybody knows how dangerous Scientology is, right? It is important, I think, that people are out here warning people of what this cult is capable of doing in this space. That this was just today, and I didn't plan on putting it in there, but when you had mentioned the idea of deceptive practices, and I saw this today, I just felt that it was something that we should talk about.
That's kind of a trap that we fall into, is a little bit of a bias confirmation, where we here in this live stream and in the chat and in the community tend to think that everybody knows that it's a cult.
Yep.
And that's a confirmation bias that we have to fight against, because not everybody knows. There are people out there that don't know that Tom Cruise is in a cult, that he's the number one member of a cult, and
Right.
people that forget that John Travolta is in a cult, people that forget Kirstie Alley was in a cult, people that forget all the, that Elizabeth Moss is in a cult. Talk about someone with complete disassociation between her being in a cult and the characters that she plays on a show all about a cult.
Yep.
I mean, that isn't a prime example of someone who completely believes that they're not in a cult, but it's okay for them to be in a highly rated TV show all about a pseudo religious organization that controls people's bodies. And I mean, yeah, it's so amazing. And it's
Absolutely.
amazing that you had that interaction with that guy, because a lot of people you might come into contact with, and how much did you find out how much money he spent on whatever he's got in his bag?
It was $30. So, and he had it was the Dianetics book.
Okay.
Which I did ask this, that I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if they do sticker prices on these, or if they kind of auction or probe the people for how much they think they can get out of these books.
There are no sticker prices. So this is the latest softback edition of Dianetics, and I got this in a lot here recently. There are no prices. There is a barcode on the back, but there is no price anywhere. Yeah. And that is on purpose, because they will typically start the price really high.
Yeah.
Right. They'll start it at, $70, $80, whatever. And then they will barter you down to 25, 30. I think a few years back, Reckless Ben went into a Scientology org, and he was basically bartering with the book registrar, over buying a copy of Dianetics. And I think at one point she got down to the price of $25. I think there is a limit that they're not allowed to go below. But guys, not that you want this book, but you can get it for $6 on eBay.
Yeah.
Or I got a copy out of a thrift store for $2.
$2.
It's one of the worst books to read. And literally, sorry, I could do a whole episode on this book, a whole series of episodes.
I want to play one more clip before, and then we'll come back over to some of the work that you again did this week. So there are times where I actually do interact with Scientology members. Now, this is a public that's going in this scenario. This was Wednesday.
I'll be right back.
Yep. So I'll try. If we can't hear it, I'll let you know what she's saying here.
Do you know that this church won't let women report crimes against them? Do you know in this church that if a woman is sexually abused, they can't report it to the police?
She's just saying what? What?
English, Spanish?
It's not a sector. I'm here for 7 years
Yep.
It's the best organization against in the life.
How has it helped you? How has it helped you?
So we really struggle here to communicate, but right, I could tell that she couldn't understand when I was saying, do you know it's a cult? Or do you know it's a cult? They won't let women report sexual abuse against them, and it just wasn't connecting. And then I said, "Well, let me try. Maybe she's Spanish speaking." So I said, "Es una secta," and then immediately, no. This is not a secta, and this is the only organization in the world that is able to help, and it's been very beneficial to her. And I think she's going to tell us that nobody in here takes drugs.
How have you received help?
Everybody here don't use drugs, don't use
Nobody does drugs. Nobody does alcohol.
Everybody outside.
They're allowed to use alcohol. They just can't use alcohol before auditing. That's good. That's congratulations. There are people that don't drink in my community as well.
So again, that there was a couple of and in this, if you go back and watch that live, you're going to see that I kind of knocked down some of her statements. But she's going to say no drugs. I say, well, except for niacin and nicotine, sure. And by the way, it's 100% niacin, and 100% of members use niacin and nicotine. And alcohol is allowed. You just can't take it before you're going on session
hours.
In this space. And then she's going to kind of blow up at me because don't film me. You better not put me on social media. And it's like, well, you shouldn't be in public. And by the way, you shouldn't really protest to cameras that you don't want to be on camera. So that's just a pro tip. If you're ever out and about and you don't want to be on a camera, I would advise you not to approach the camera and start talking to the camera.
Oh, I clearly believe that she got handled after getting in the.
Well, and she
not illegal. And yes, I'm making fun of you. Then if you
we're
don't
about
want
to
stay
see
here,
she's
if you
going to get
don't
some
want
help
to stay
coming
here,
in.
go inside. Oh, that's nice. Oh,
Look at her.
You're being
Did you see her running?
in. Don't go. Yeah, don't stand out here. Look, here comes the safeguard.
So she would have been the person that was doing the blinds, and she sits at the administrative desk, and I'm sure she was watching the video, saw me talking to her on the overhead, and it's like, oh my God, I got to get out there. But I did like seeing her run around the corner to pull her in. But again, that's what is it 7 or 8, right? Which is the physical body routing.
8C.
Yeah, 8C on that process. So,
it's interesting that had you ever seen her before?
No. So that is and by the way, she had said 7 years. She's been in Scientology for 7 years. I have never seen her before.
So wonder if she was off lines and somehow they're pulling her back in, that they've brought her back in to get online, because most of the members that you've seen go in and out of there of recent day have been briefed on how not to interact with you or to interact with any of the protesters out there. But she obviously had not gotten that briefing. I just said it. She had not received that briefing. So I'm wondering if either she was at a different org for a while, maybe she was at Flag, or if she was off lines, and because you don't see that anymore. Nobody that's going in on a regular basis is having any interaction with the auditors out front.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really enjoyed when we were up in St. Paul, because it was new. Protesting is not something that was happening in the Twin Cities, and the public would talk to us. They didn't, they hadn't been briefed, and they wouldn't have been briefed. And the reason being that you don't want to tell your other unaffected organizations that protesting is existing against the organization. So there's no reason to alert your members to this. Now, we do think that they did tell the staff, because the day before we got up there in Minnesota, the doors to, there's like a mall it's an old history museum, that Children's History Museum, or Children's Museum, but then it also is a mall. So there's a public space in there as well. Well, those doors were all locked. The day before, those doors were all open. So it was obvious that something had changed, and there was probably an alert saying, hey, you better beware. There's going to be protesters up there tomorrow, because I think that we'd all let everybody know that we were going to be out there protesting on Saturday.
I think the Director of Special Affairs, which is the staff position that's in every org, has a direct line of communication to OSA Int. or OSA at the CLO level, Continental Liaison Office. And those people, that OSA group is watching the streams. They probably have some kind of 24-hour rotation of people who have got all
It's a dirty job,
230.
right? It's
Yeah,
a new
it's a
dirty
dirty
job.
job. Like I may do a dirty job on being an OSA agent, but it's probably the DSA, which is I found out does not have to be a Sea Org position, but they are getting direct telexes probably or emails from whatever OSA organization is next up the chain that's been watching, and it's them that are then sending out the staff. But it's only on a compartmentalized as needed basis.
Right.
It's not going to be just widespread dissemination to the whole continental liaison, continental office, or even to the whole country that there's protesters, right?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
All right. So
What
shall we go on
else
to
you got? Yeah.
Okay. So the big thing that I did this past week was the first episode of my Dirty Jobs of Scientology, or Scientology Dirty Jobs, which is a series that I started, all again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show tonight, all about the little person on the totem pole that's having to do the day in, day out grind, grudgery of delivering Scientology or keeping Scientology working, as they like to say. And my first guest was Oh No Nora, who we all know and love, who's an amazing person. And Oh No Nora was a Golden Age of Tech trained word clearer, directly trained by Miscavige in 1995, 96 on the new Golden Age of Tech, which is the first time that David Miscavige squirreled L. Ron Hubbard's words. And I invited her because word clearing is one of the dirtiest jobs that you have to do, not so much from a physical perspective, but from a menial, mental, time-consuming kind of position where you have to be in the course room with students taking courses. And when they run into, they're reading this book or whatever course book, and they come across.
And so he's super worried about it.
And yeah, prefront. That was Pixel that did that. Epilepsy and all this other. Pixel's butt is
always blame the cat.
Well, I mean, he's right there. So I mean, he's like right there on my keyboard.
You took over his desk.
He basically does. Usually, though, when I'm giving my shows, he's on Suppressive Sherry's lap in the other side of the room. But apparently, tonight he's all about his daddy. Anyway, so I brought her on. She came on. She's such a wonderful guest. So love Nora. She's like one of my favorite people in all of the Scientology community. And I wanted her to go through her day in the life of a word clearer, because after she completed her word clearing training at Flag, along with, Aaron was also there. She was also being a course supervisor training along with Serge Delmar. She went back to Celebrity Center in LA, and we're going to listen to her talk about her mornings.
When the org moves in and starts delivering service, they then have to pay a mortgage on an already paid off. You can pull it up on the map. Los Angeles. I'm gonna send you this.
So she's talking about.
So you can pull it up on the map.
Where she was living.
He figured that out, and so what he did is he started a private account at one of the.
He is the captain at the time, the captain of Celebrity Center, and he had bypassed a lot of their real estate shenanigans. He figured it out, and he actually paid off the mortgage on Celebrity Center and their properties. And what I had asked her is, tell me where you were living, because she was living in an apartment building with 6 other women in the same room. And then she's going to talk about how she had to walk to work.
Banks that, because they bank, Scientology orgs bank at multiple banks. They will keep huge amounts of cash at multiple banks. So it's never in like one egg, right? Like Bank of America, Chase, all these things. So that landmark right there, if you zoom in, the mama shelter. There's the post office across the street. This is the irony of this building. If you can look at the street view, I can show you the room that I slept in from the outside. So now it looks beautiful. Like we used to hang out on these little balconies here. And then the roof was a hangout. Now the roof is an actual restaurant. But this little side door didn't exist. And if you go to that way to the other street.
Oh,
that's okay. So all these buildings, all those windows on the bottom weren't there either. So if you, so right where those two people.
This was the Wilcox building. This is what they used to be the berthing for the people at CC.
People are sitting. Used to be a double set of doors for you to go in. And that was where you got into the building, or this other little side door here where that door is now. So now the bottom is all like basically reception for a hotel, all the little accoutrement, like things. Now, if you look up above this awning to the second floor, that is room, I believe, 209 right there. The second one up.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is the dorm that I was living in at the time when, and the windows are much better now. So the windows that were on there were like those windows that are like little stacks of things that you can open, little bifold thingies.
Yep.
And they were like 300 years old. So like single pane. So imagine in the dead of winter in Los Angeles, you have no heat. And then when it's blazing hot, no air conditioning whatsoever.
Wow.
And you're on a bunk bed that is from World War II. Very squeaky, springs poking up into your, like, who knows when they got mattresses.
So then she talks about how she had to, in heels and a skirt and hose, had to walk because back then they didn't have shuttle buses. And she had to walk all the way, and she shows us the map to basically her route to work every day.
Directions to Celebrity Center.
Oh, we're going to Celebrity Center. So it's Franklin Avenue something?
Yeah, 5930 Franklin Avenue.
5930.
You got to erase the other one, though. There you go.
I had an e-meter in my way, so I had a keyboard off to the side, so it was hard to type.
Okay. I'm disappointed that you're getting tech pointers from Nora.
See all the ways you can walk, and do walking, because that's how we would do it. Now nobody ever went that way, by the way. We more often go this way, right?
So you go down Selma and then up. What
we would walk up to Hollywood,
or
Sunset, and then walk down and then walk up that way. Or sometimes I would walk to the next street over and go up. But that's, the distance there is over a mile, right? So it's going to take you, it's going to take you like a half an hour.
If you're lucky with traffic and all that, right?
If you're lucky with the crosswalks and everything else, it's going to take you a half an hour to walk there. More often than not, you're running down Hollywood Boulevard in your uniform, or you're lucky enough to know someone who has a car, because they were not transporting us. They were not giving, now they do vans, right?
I was going to ask you, did they have like a bus or something, like a shuttle or something? No, okay.
No, Celebrity Center, we were considered so close to, the org that they were not going to provide us transportation. Unlike the guys who worked at, like unless you worked at Celebrity Center and you lived over by PAC or your spouse worked.
And one thing she mentions here, I don't want to take up too much more time, but this was back in the 90s. This was right after the riots. These were not great neighborhoods, and they're all walking. And at Celebrity Center, she was in heels and a skirt and hose. And as you all know, Nora, that's not her favorite kind of clothing to wear. Can't imagine it would be probably anybody's. And she would be there way early in the morning till way late at night. So I also wanted to show that during this episode, we actually did some e-metering, which I think is pretty rare. We talk about the misunderstood word, what forces you into a word clearing session. And we did an example, and I thought the example came off really, really well. Let me see.
State and just say, hey, I am a Joe Jonas.
Well, I talk about, that's the thing she's talking about. We go through the different types of word clearing. We'll talk about that real quick. And we have
9 of them.
There are 9, right?
Correct.
And we have method 1. which we have this lovely woman holding the cans and this
Yes.
gentleman.
This is actually an auditing procedure, method 1.
Okay.
It's a legit auditing procedure.
And Scientology loves their illustrations, y'all, but they've gotten better over the years.
And this is supposed to clear you of all of your basic MUs on the whole track.
So this is not something you can just randomly jump into. This is like, you have to have all your roods in. You have to have all your.
And it takes multiple sessions.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we got that one. Then we've got method 2, which is also a metered action.
Yeah. So this one, you're going to read every single word on the page
Okay.
while that word clear is watching the meter. And if
Can you all imagine? You're sitting there holding your cans. The auditor's got the meter going. And as you are physically reading your words, they're watching the needle to see if the needle has an action that might indicate you've misunderstood something. And that happens to me here in just a bit.
anytime while you're reading a reaction happens, you stop the person and then you find the word that read and you clear that. Whether the person says they know it or not, you have to clear the word that read
So
and then bring that word to an FN.
is this an auditing action, or is this just using the meter as just a quick tool to figure that out?
It's a lie detector meter.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. Then we have method 3. So definitely go check that out, all the different methods. We're going to actually skip forward ahead here, and she's going to help me set up one of my meters. A meter setup.
I see that. So flip it to test first. You got to flip it all the way to test. That's always the first thing you do. And then back to on. You want to make sure.
Scroll up real quick.
Yeah. And then back to on. So you always want to make sure that needle bangs really hard when you do the test. Otherwise, it's not properly charged. Okay. Now you're going to take the sensitivity dial, which is the small dial, the mini dial, and put that at 8. You always start at 8.
Okay.
And then you're going to hold the cans in your one hand. Okay. And make sure your hand is fully in the middle so you get grip with like 2 fingers on each side. Perfect. Okay. So now with the big arm, the big dial, that's called the tone arm.
Right.
You're going to adjust it to the set. And then you're going to squeeze the cans. And you want the squeeze to go from the set to approximately the line right after the fall. That would be okay. So now you're going to bump up the sensitivity. Let that go. Oh, and put the sensitivity on normal in the middle there. Perfect. Okay, so let's bring the tone arm back to set. Just relax your hand. Just have a nice, natural, relaxed grip on the cans. There you go. And then squeeze the cans. Okay, bring that sensitivity down to 6.5.
Okay.
Okay. Squeeze the cans. Perfect. All right. So now we're dialed in.
All right.
Yeah, I'm good, babe.
All right. So if you ever wanted to know, and this was something that I have read the books. I've never known how to, and I do have I've got 2 functioning e-meters, although one I took the battery out of. Never known how to actually set up an e-meter to actually start using. And that's why I did make a clip of this on my channel. If you all encounter a meter in your future and you want to know how to use it, how to get it set up, well, there you go. So then we move on to actually.
Dave, I want to ask you a question there. Were you nervous? Like, you're being tested at this point in time. What's kind of going through your head?
I was a little bit nervous. I was, because at this point I'm solo auditing in a way, because I don't have, normally you would have the cans in both hands, one in each, but because I'm basically having to use the solo can configuration, which there's a little plastic insert between the two, and y'all, those are the kid cans. I will tell you that much. That's the only insert that I had, is the one that works for the kid cans. So that's my smallest set of cans. So me having to both operate the meter and hold the cans and read, which I'm going to get ready to start reading one of the Keeping Scientology Working. I was a little nervous that I was going to mess it up. And in Scientology, they would call that flubbing, and nobody wants to flood. So we're going to move on to
that.
Okay, the word that.
Needle.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good, babe.
So right.
Okay. You want to make sure, do you have any rings on that finger?
No rings.
No rings on that hand?
No,
Okay.
none at all.
Okay, just make sure it's not touching any metal. All right. And then you want to always keep the needle between the set
Why am I
if you can.
going nuts here? Why is it?
That's all right. Just bring it down. You're all right. You're just
Okay.
getting, you just had a blow down. That means you had a realization. It's all good.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first couple of lines
Mhm.
and I'm going to have a misunderstood word.
Okay, go ahead.
And should I read out loud or
Read
for
out
everybody?
loud.
Okay. This is the Keeping Scientology Working.
What was that?
So y'all saw my needle moved. And I promise you, I was not like intentionally trying to make it go up. I don't know, I didn't have any hand cream. And for those of you that don't know, oftentimes you have to have hand cream and they've got their own special kind of non-scented hand cream. And, you have to make sure that you're comfortable and you have to take your shoes off and unbutton your pants and stuff. I didn't do any of that. In fact, Nora even said that I was pretty well, the meter was reading me pretty well, but already I had a misunderstood word according to the meter. Keeping.
Before that?
This is Keeping Scientology Working.
See, so the read, I would be still looking for that read. It was probably just your breath. So just keep going.
We have sometime since passed the point of achieving uniformly workable technology. The only thing now is getting the technology applied. If you can't get the technology applied, then you can't deliver what's promised. It's as simple as that. If you can get the technology applied.
What's that? So now I would say we're going to look up.
Okay, so y'all see that on the word that.
That.
Okay, the word that.
The word that. See?
Okay. All right, so now I have to put the cans down.
Dictionary. Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're going to go and literally you could be caught up on as simple a word as that. All right, the last thing I'm going to show from this video is, and you all need to check this out, is I try to float my needle because I'm
but your
not
TA's in range. I wouldn't even give you lotion.
Yeah, I was just talking about
because you want the person's TA to be between 2 and 3, like yours is.
And again, the tone arm is this style here, and they want the tone arm. She's saying the tone arm needle needs to be between 2 and 3.
You really only give people lotion if they have a high tone arm. When
it puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again.
Grab the, Patrick Skinner. Your FM was skiing in powdered snow. That's wonderful. That's a good memory.
Now the needle going to the right is good, right?
Yeah, if it does a big movement and stays down there and you have to move the big arm to get the needle back on the dial, that's called a blowdown. And that means that mass is moving away. Okay. You're having a cognition. Things are coming to light for you.
Okay. I'm trying to make it float. I'm trying to think of like I love Disney World, so I'm trying to think,
Keep thinking about it. Don't stare at the meter. Just think about it. There you go. So you had like a little almost again, but every time you're thinking about it, you get a little bit. See, now you got a dirty needle.
I think that was the hardest part, was trying to make the needle float, because you hear about, Aaron talks about he's got a great metabolism or something, and he's able to make his needle float. And then you heard Mark Headley would talk about how he would just think about Depeche Mode and all these people. And so trying to make my needle float was probably the harder than the word clearing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That was just an amazing, definitely check out that live. I mean, gonna have Nora on again for more of this stuff, and I'm hopeful we'll do some more metering. I'm okay getting audited by someone I trust like that.
Right.
I would never go into the cult to get audited.
One is, I just want to say, Tina, I will say that there were plenty of time. When I was a kid, that very last word was a very common word. And I hate that people use that so freely. And then it's a shame that these stupid associations were put together in your time, right? And I would say the same thing, that some of these stupid thoughts and philosophies would come up in my time, that there must be something wrong with you if you're being left-handed, right? So
I was going to bring this up. I am, you all can't, I don't know if y'all can see, let me solo myself for just real quickly. You all can see up here on here, I've got 4 different e-meters, 2 Mark 7 Quantums. The one that I used with Nora is that one right there. I've got a blue one. And then over here, I've got 2 Mark 5s. I've got one from the 90s, which was a reproduction. And then I've got this one right here, which is older than I am. It was run from 74. And one of the episodes that I plan on having is we're going to break them down again, and we're going to compare the technology in the 3 different versions. And we're going to, hopefully I'm going to get an electrical, I do have a little bit of electrical engineering, but I'm hopeful to get an electrical engineer that can like identify what all the different components are and what they're really doing, from an electrical perspective. And I know there's been other videos out there on YouTube's about the e-meter, but I think breaking it down component by component it's interesting, and especially to compare this one right here, the technology, this blue one that I've got up here. I've opened them up before, and it's just completely different, like total 60s, 70s electronics.
very cool. All right. Now, I think that I think that Bridgen has left, but I did want to bring this up, that, right. And this was early on in our conversation, right. And I did push somebody this week quite a bit, saying, "Hey, what did you do to bring me in?" The guy on Monday, right. The guy that walked around for probably an hour, trying to kind of just walk me all over Printers Row, in that space. But I found that, yeah, it was probably being led away so that people get out of the org. But I do like giving them clear cognition, the wall of fire, these types of things. What did you bring me in? Giving them other LRH quotes in that space, just to kind of show them. Like, one of the other things that I was doing pretty consistently there was, right, that this is what LRH thinks, or this is what Scientology thinks is valuable use of your time, right? So I think Amber might have already left as well, but right, this was always a big problem, right? Well, no, this would have been the benefit of it, right? That if you make it to the top of the bridge, then when you drop your body in your next life, well, here it's either go to target 2, or when you come back, you have perfect recall, and you just walk into the nearest Scientology and say, "Hey, it's me again, ready to go," right? In these situations. Jen had a couple of questions. So Jen X, who was in here, closer to these, that we are aware that people have broken down these before. As Patrick was just saying, as Dave was just saying, that there definitely are videos that are out there. It's been, I don't want to say disapproved, but it used to be the FDA has a claim against them that you can't say it's a medical device.
Correct. So in the 60s, the FDA filed suit against the church in DC, and actually went in and confiscated all of the e-meters, the books, the dianosine, which was a chemical compound that Hubbard was concocting, and filed suit against them. And that's good. I've got a bunch of those documents, and it's going to be alive in the future. And as part of that, let me see if I can grab my meter and I'll show you.
Cool. And this is just that Patrick had was talking about that Mindy Willens had talked to a Neverin who was near the Wilcox building, and basically had the same description of that Wilcox building. So thanks, Patrick. And we've got Fuzzy as, again, re-upped member. I'm not sure if this is my channel or your channel, but regardless, we both value Fuzzy very well. Yeah.
Okay. So in the, let me bring up, There is a, not the cat butt.
Do cats make a good e-meter stand?
Yeah. So there is a label on the bottom of this that basically
I heard that,
says,
Cherry.
by itself, this meter does nothing. It is solely for the purpose, it is solely for the guide of ministers of the church in confessionals and pastoral counseling. The electrometer is not medically or scientifically capable of improving the health or bodily function of anyone and is for religious use by students and ministers of the Church of Scientology only. Hubbard, e-meter, and Scientology are trademarks, blah, blah, blah. So, and according to, this is a gold cert. So apparently this e-meter was not only built at Gold Base by children, but it was probably recertified at Gold Base by children, which we had a whole conversation about that that day. But yeah,
I remember when I can't remember. There are several former Scientologists that one of their jobs at points in time was they worked in the factory or assembly line of putting together e-meters.
Well, Amy Scobie was in there. She was doing soldering. Children from the Ranch, Jenna Miscavige was in there doing work on the meters. And being hand soldered, being hand put together. Now their current one is made in China. Now their current one has this is like half analog, half digital. Their current meter, from my understanding, is almost all digital, and it actually has less components in it, and it's being manufactured over in China by Chinese workers, and it's actually part for part. I think Headley said that the part for part, this meter has a part cost of about $400, not including labor. Okay.
Wow.
The part for part cost of the new meter, the one that's sold today, has a part cost of about $40 to $40 to $100. This meter, I think, was sold, the Super 7 Quantum was sold for about $5,000 a unit, and you had to buy two. If you were going, especially if you're going to be a professional auditor, you had to have two at all times in case one needed to be recharged. They contain batteries like this. This is out of the other meter. That's why this is out of this blue meter right here. And this is just a stack of nickel cadmium batteries with a little connector. This is a dead cell. On the older meters, they have a stack of you can't even really get these anymore. They're like rechargeable nickel cell coin, but it's all like hand done. All of this is hand done.
Yeah.
And then they had Sea Org children of Sea Org members themselves.
This one I don't it's a factory, right? So they're contracting. Yeah.
There is no Scientology in China that I know of.
Except for those Taiwanese, but that depends on what you call China these days.
Yeah. Mainland China.
Politics is on the other channel.
Yeah. Mainland China, there aren't any Scientology organizations that I know of. There might be under the radar type stuff, but
nice.
So it's very likely that this e-meter was touched by someone we know, sadly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That, boy, I don't think about those things. Right.
Yeah. It has, it charges on the back. It has a charging port. It has an Ethernet jack to connect to a remote tone arm. But yeah, the likelihood that somebody we knew might have, because this one here was last certified to be used in 2008. And they get what's called a gold or silver certification for 2 years. So technically this one was able to be used up until April of 2010 but you can't use it at all now unless you're an independent or free zoner.
Gotcha. I want to there was another one of the shows that I had this week, and I'm going to say it was less Scientology. So I just want to play one clip from it. But one of the protesters in Chicago, his name's Israel Brownstein. And by the way, I know I pronounce it wrong. Amy M is there, but Israel knows that I say Israel, and that's how he first told me. But he is a survivor of the flight United Airlines 232 that went down in Sioux City, Iowa in 1989. He is probably the youngest person with a memory of the day. There were two children that were younger than him, but they would have been kind of before the age of reason. And we've been going through a little bit of an interview series with what happened. Last week we talked about what happened at the crash, and then this week we've been talking a little bit more about the traumas that occurred. And I just want to show you. It's going to be kind of bad audio, but I think that this is kind of important information. So I'm going to try to show you his mother's experience on the day of. I can't imagine the trauma of even your mother in the instance, the idea, hearing no survivors. That's got to be it for her, right? The idea that, and she has to take it at face value. That must be fact, right?
She was wearing a white dress that day. She was supposed to go to a wedding that night. And, again, like you said, from the face of God, she was right outside of a mechanic that she used to take our cars to. And
yeah, sorry, the sound's not great on there. I'm going to try to clean that up for future elements. But he's on the plane by himself. His mother hears over the radio, no survivors. That's the best information she has. She thinks she's just lost her son. That she breaks down in front of a mechanic's office. You're talking about she's got a beautiful white dress on. There's a wedding later on this day. You can imagine that she's being wrapped, comforted by a mechanic who has greasy hands in that space. So it's really impressive to understand the trauma that was associated with him, with his family, with his direct family. Years later, he had problems with his unit family in this space. And I just think it's an interesting element that one of the people that's out here protesting Scientology had one of these just unbelievable accident stories or tragedy stories that's there. And they're still here today and still up and rallying against the Church of Scientology. I like the episode. I think it's really, he's an interesting person. If you ever get a chance to talk with Israel, I think you really enjoy it.
I got to talk to him on his chat one day, and then definitely going to be reaching out to him because I want to talk to him about because he's a psychiatrist or psychologist or something. And I want to talk to him about, the psychological impact of Scientology and what it really truly does to the brain, the brainwashing and all that. Because that, needs to be talked about. So he is an amazing person, and he's connected. He knows Solomon from LA, and that was really awesome.
So yeah, he's connected to Solomon's family. He's also connected to Mindy's family.
Oh wow, really?
So that's really kind of how that's Mindy. He was basically responsible for that day.
Wow.
So, any more clips, or do we?
I got one more clip. I just wanted, and I know that Natalie brought it up on her channel, but we have the whole Code of a Sea Org member, and because when you join the Sea Org, you have to learn this code, and this code is very culty, and go through all the different things, including upholding the Sea Org. Yeah, your Boy Scout type stuff. Your promise to be competent. Your promise to accept and fulfill the utmost of my ability and responsibilities. So talked about that. We also then talked about the training that you go through, some of the training that you go through. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. And then we actually talk about what it's like, what do you get to wear, you know, because it's important. The uniform is important, right? And so we've all seen the Stolen Valor naval uniforms that let me move the boy here. And I thought it was important to show the evolution of Sea Org uniforms over time. And I just thought, I'm going to play it from the earliest uniform pictures that I've got up until more recent stuff. I showed this several lives back, and I thought it was really interesting because these are pictures that I found in one of the AOLA magazines that I have of back in the 70s, what the AOLA org members were wearing. Now, AOLA is a Sea Org org. So the people that are giving and delivering services there are Sea Org members. So this is the uniform that they were wearing back in the day, back in the 60s and the 70s. Ooh, look at that smock. And look at that. Isn't that's like Star Trek schmuck. That's like Captain Kirk.
That's 70s. Yeah, that's
yeah. It looks kind of comfortable, actually. It looks like more like what somebody in a hospital like scrubs.
Right.
But, you know, I just thought it was very interesting. Just, you know, could wear a turtleneck underneath it. But look at, it's also, you know, this was very reminiscent. I don't know how many of you all are old, but how old you all are. But this is kind of like what grocery store clerks would wear back in the 60s and 70s. Like if you were to go see a cashier, go to the deli department or whatever, they wore a lot of this similar stuff. Very ER. Yes, very ER. So I just thought that was very interesting. So that was the 60s and 70s at AOLA. In the 90s and 2000s at Flag, they implemented, and I've heard Matt Pesch talk about this, they implemented a sort of pastel system for your job. And this is taken from a video that you can watch on YouTube, all about, it's kind of an introduction to Flag and what Flag can do for you. And here we have some Div 6 or Div 2 people, and they're wearing kind of this gray, more of a tan beige, you know, suit, if you will. And the tie is this weird diamond shape complementary tie. These are job postings, but I believe, I don't think that's he. No. Here we have this woman wearing she's an admin, so she's a qualifications section, so she's in the qual department. So she's wearing, looks like a gray. Now it could be the lighting, I don't know. And then we have the auditor. It's wearing kind of this greenish. Yes, this was the 90s and 2000s, so shoulder pads were still in. And then we have the executive department, and they wore this blue. Okay, no one says not Heber. Okay. So there you got that. And then today, dress blues on the left. And I guess this is post Scientology. And then here we have the current Flag uniform, and that's the blue with the silver back. These are all the golden age of admin trainees that was taken just a couple of years ago or a year ago. By the way, that is the Superpower building. That's the new building. The video that I'm presenting as part of the Flag uniform didn't actually exist. So this is all very new. A lot of them have fired back to their orgs. People like Aaron Cairo are in here somewhere. I haven't tried to find him.
So this was the recent admin.
Kind of. These are the golden age. Yep. These are all the outer org trainees, and they wear Sea Org uniforms. So this is what the Sea Org in Flag, because the Flag is a Sea Org organization. When you're there as an outer org trainee, you wear the uniform of the Sea Org, basically. And that is what they were wearing while they were training at night for the past 2 or 3 years.
In the prior those prior uniforms that we're seeing, and we talked a little bit about this on Nora's when Nora was with you, that it looked like in this entire little snippet of video, everybody was wearing a suit. No, there were no skirts or no traditional female wear. Right.
My understanding is, and I think there's been some other YouTube videos on other channels. I think Danielle is her name. I think there's a Danielle who was a Sea Org member at Flag during the 90s, late 90s and early 2000s, and she was responsible. I think she worked for Shelley Miscavige, and she was responsible for implementing a lot of the uniforms that they wore back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And Dave went through a weird phase where he wanted to color code the different departments. And according to Matt, Matt Pesh was the Treasury Secretary, so head of Division 3. He's also the one that ran the slush fund that covered up crimes against children and whatnot. He actually wore some kind of a pink salmon-like uniform because they made from what I understand, they made a deal with the city of Clearwater not to continue wearing the naval uniforms, that it was becoming distraction and it was too confusing. And Florida is a very big naval state.
Right.
I mean, there's more Navy bases in Florida, almost more Navy bases in Florida than there are in most other states. So they made a concession, believe it or not. Scientology made a concession that they would stop wearing the naval uniforms, except for whatever special events, I guess. And they switched over to the 3-piece suits and skirts and things like that. The video that I was showing, the screenshots that I was showing were from the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, I think, before Debbie Cook went to the hole, and then it got out and all that stuff happened. But now he's in this whole like vest, and I think they do have like blue. They've got like a complimentary coat that goes with but most of the time they're in just their vests that we see all the time, and their valet uniforms, basically.
Gotcha.
And I think at the very end, I showed old pictures of some of the executives, like that's Mark Yeager before he went gray and bald.
And now they've got the command or the exhibition pins, right?
Right.
Which is that's true naval stolen valor.
Yeah. That's Guillaume Leserve right there. Then we've got David Miscavige earlier when he used to wear his dress blues, and then dress whites, that just all very copy from the U.S. Navy. And then today you'll hardly ever see him in anything but a suit. So
right.
But that's it's important. It's important to know what you're going to wear when you. And that's another thing. Cults like to uniform. They don't want you individuating in Scientology. They don't want you being an individual. They want you to be a part of a collective, which is very anti-Hubbard. Hubbard was very much anti-communist, but yet he ended up creating we're not going to get into politics, but
yeah. All right. We've been chatting at you for a couple of hours. What haven't we told you about this week? What would you like to know? What would you like to know from either of our channels? Right. So, what are some of the things that I can do differently? What are some of the things you'd like to see out of Dave's channel? I know that not to put all pressure on you. Yeah, and I see Gen X. By the way, thanks for contributing so much. Really appreciate that. And yeah, there are plenty of Navy bases there. You've got both the space and the Navy or the Air Force on the other side on the Atlantic coast.
I was going to bring this up. Gen X said, billion-year contract. How would that hold up in court? It doesn't.
Yeah,
there is no legality. It's a symbolic contract, but it's a contract that if you break it, you're considered a degraded being, and you have to go through an amends program to be able to continue doing services if you don't want to get disconnected from your family. And from an accounting perspective, nope, everybody makes $50 a week except for David Miscavige. So,
right. Hey, I got a question on this one, Patrick. There are people that I would have said look like they're wearing custodial. So the boiler suit, I'm guessing, is that custodial uniform. There are at least 3 people that I see in Chicago that wear that. Are they RPF or EPF or whatever that might be? And you probably would have seen them. I think today. Today either today opened with that or Wednesday opened with it. Right after I got to the org, we would have seen the balder old gentleman with the white beard wearing that, again, custodian's jumpsuit.
I will say that in the past, if you were on the RPF, you had to not only wear a boiler suit, but you also had to wear an armband. And that armband signified what lower condition you were in.
Gotcha.
Since they've done away technically with the RPF, I think you'll never really truly know if the boiler suit is indicative of being on what they call the category B EPF or not. But the estates people do wear the janitorial type uniforms and the boiler suits. I just don't think you're ever going to really know. I mean, they're taking away rank pins and stuff on the collar so that you never really know. They don't want you knowing. They don't want you being able to identify anybody.
Well, I would imagine that it causes some strife and confusion internally. It's that they don't want anybody externally being able to identify, right?
Correct. They used to post boards, and Patrick can probably attest to this, but they used to have a board when you got put on the RPF or you got put on the decks, which was like a little less bad than the RPF, or you got put into lower conditions. It was made public to the rest of the org that you were publicly shamed, and that was the purpose of the armband, was so that people would know that if you had a gray armband, you were in liability condition, or if you had something, or if you were in a boiler suit. Now they do have boiler suits for when you're on the ships, but yeah, Patrick says it's called the fitness board. Whether they do that, they probably still do that, but they're only going to do that for the people that are actually physically in the buildings. You're never going to know outside. They're never going to want you to know what condition somebody is in. You just make assumptions that if somebody's out there scrubbing the grounds, or somebody is doing manual labor of some sort, that maybe they're on, unless that's their job, if they're in the estates organization, that they might be. I mean, the day that Chadwick was out there scrubbing, I don't know if he did that because he was on the decks, or if he was out there voluntarily, or if someone just said, go out there and cause a ruckus. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, on the Memorial Day, the day that I had issues with chalk and everything, the janitor came out and he was the one that did that. And I apologize. The person in the custodial outfit was the one that he would come out and wash the sidewalk. So.
I think it all boils down to we're never going to really truly know what condition somebody's in unless there's an insider. And that's what we really need, is we need some insiders. We need some UTRs that are under the radars, that are in these orgs, feeding us information about. Absolutely. And Wendy and I both have email addresses. Mine is dave@declaredave.com. Wendy's is WindyCityThetanWatch@gmail.com, I think.
Correct.
Yep. And please, if you know of any information, either you're connected to somebody that's active in some of these orgs, send it to us, man. Send it to any of us. So we want to know.
Excellent. All right. Feels like we're kind of, let's see here. Wait, Kansas City, the same person cleans the chalk.
All right, we got Mike from Kansas City. Awesome. Good to see you.
Howdy, Mike.
Yeah, R1 visas. And that's the other thing. A lot of these people being brought over on R1s are non-English speaking.
Correct.
So
that you can definitely, you always are hearing foreign accents when you're at the Chicago org. I did hear foreign accents when I was at the Twin Cities org. So yeah. What else do we have, Dave?
Let me see. I'm gonna just check the chat here real quick. We are going to get this cult shut down. That's our goal, whether it happens or not. Just a reminder that, you know, Wendy's out there almost every day. I guess you're almost out there almost every day.
It's like at least 3 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, he's putting himself physically out there, and so are Auditing Scientology out in Kansas City. You know, support these folks. They're doing the grunt work for us. And, you know, all we can do is make sure that they know that we're watching. If you can get out there to join, even if you don't want to protest, if you just want to be eyes on the street, get out there in Chicago or wherever. It always helps to have that second set of eyes, so that, you know, Wendy can get around back or can follow, you know, and then, you know, make sure you're out there hyping up the channels, especially the smaller channels. I love Aaron just as much as everybody. I love Natalie just as everybody, but, you know, there's a lot of varied content out there, and it's important that we try to support as much as we can all the different content creators. You know, I don't do this as a job. I have a daytime job. I do this because I care. All the monetization that I get on my channel just goes to feeding this library or keeping StreamYard subscription, because it's not cheap.
Right. Yeah, that the vast majority of the expenses that are associated with this are really the software that we have to do, whether it's editing or streaming in this space. That Dave has the library that's there. I've got the equipment that I need to have out on the street, right? The business cards that I have to not have to print, that I print because I think they're valuable, that are out there.
I did want to state that I did arbitrarily inflate my collection of my own materials. I went out and I stat pushed all of my Way to Happiness books, because Wendy was just putting me to shame. So instead of me going out and actually collecting them from or body routers, I just went on eBay. And you all know what? I want to show you all. I paid, not including shipping, I paid $2 for all these Way to Happiness books. Now, these are the older volumes from the 80s, but, you know, I just I need to rub it in Wendy's.
Yeah. Dave, make room. You got space for some more stuff coming down there.
I do need more stuff. So, you know, Sherry just expects it now. She just, it's like, it's wonderful to have a wife that's just as dedicated to, you know, the anti-Scientology crusade as I am. And she's been working on the Cincinnati, researching the Cincinnati org and its history. And we're going to have a whole series on that. I mean, she's been looking into the crazy financial records and real estate conglomerates and stuff that they create, shell companies that they create around when they go around purchasing properties, and we're going to expose it. And she's been very integral on that. So
yeah, I want to bring this one up once again. Now, I got some time to spend with Allie. Allie is the person, is Z News, that's out there in Kansas City. And when we were up in Minnesota, her and I just kind of went off and had a little chat on our own. It's I'm a technology geek as well. I like to do web development. She does all the web development there. But she still makes sure that she sets aside, she wants to say, on Thursdays, I go to protest, right? And she always tries to preserve and protect that time so that she can actually be out there on the streets. But the work that she does for the SBTV community or the anti-Scientology community is just amazing. Between her and Fluffer Squirrel UK and Brigitte at Voila, which I apologize that for the French there, but also it's not just those three. If we think about it, Scientology Geek, I think is one of the people that's doing the Chat GPT fine tuning, and then you've got Skywriter 180, Skywriter 140. She does the Wikipedia, or not Wikipedia, the wiki Scientology or Wikitology or whatever.
Wikitology, yeah. I will say, Scientology Geek, she is like me. She has a library that she's been collecting, physical library. She has one device that I really, really want. She's got the e-meter drill simulator device, and I'm so envious that she's got that. If anybody out there has an old e-meter drill simulator, an old, sitting around that you were, from your days, let me know, because I am so looking for that. I'm so looking for that, but I'm a little envious of what she's got.
Yep. All right.
Oh, I was gonna show one more picture, Windy, real quick, about the oh, let me just switch it over here. I was gonna show the, they've really upped their game. If anybody knows who Dan in Atlanta is, he was trying to get, he just did handwriting version of this. So if anybody knows who Dan is, of course, this was from 1981, so he probably isn't on in the cult anymore, but all right.
Awesome. All right. I'm ready to go find myself a soda.
Yeah.
Lay down in front of the TV.
Yep. Me too.
We've got Fuzzy's found for us that Nance Drew. She's out there celebrating. I think there's a band playing over there, but go over. Let's go see Nance Drew. She's got a court date tomorrow, but it's going to be a stream. It's going to be a Zoom court meet, not an actual physical court meeting. Courtroom.
And remember, Mondays and Thursdays, I have my expose show at 9 p.m. Eastern. This coming Monday is going to be on OTs for Never Ends. So what is OT 1 and 2 from a Never End perspective? And then on Thursday, instead of at 9 p.m., we're going to have the second episode in the Dirty Job series. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern with a special guest. And I'm going to announce that tomorrow or Monday, who that special guest is. So make sure you are subscribed to both of our channels and that you got the notification bell on, and that you remember to hit the like and subscribes and do all that awesome 6 p.m. Eastern for me on Thursday, which would be 2 p.m. 3 p.m. Central or Pacific time on Thursday. Normally it's at 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm already getting myself. But you all know this person. That's why I'm not going to announce them just yet, but you're not going to want to miss it. More Scientology Dirty Jobs.
Nice. I like that series.
I think I'm going to have another special guest on Monday as well, but we'll see about that.
Awesome. Love it.
All
right, folks. Really appreciate you being here tonight. Dave, thanks for sharing some time with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Let's head over to Nance Drew. Wish her a happy birthday. Let her know that Declared Dave and Wendy say hi. Thank you, everybody.
Later.